you are officially Gold Star Christians. Really, not a lot of people go to church on New Year's Day, but you did. That's a gold star. Raise your hand if fireworks woke you up last night. Yeah, but you still came. You still came. The 3 p.m. Christmas Eve service at First-Plymouth is just so sweet. That's our Christmas pageant, where the children in the parish dress up as shepherds and angels. And every year, the newest baby in our church plays Jesus, and we have wise men, and this whole beautiful tableau takes shape with Mary and Joseph gazing at the divine child, and angels dancing, and shepherds gathering. It's so sweet. And sweetly chaotic as well. The shepherds can go rogue, right? They'll start running down the hallways, and we need a shepherd for the shepherds, actually. And the angels, they can go sideways and get a little upset and be less than angelic. You got to calm them down a little bit. And the baby Jesus, it's a newborn. So if you're watching closely during the pageant, the baby throws up 2 or 3 times. It's a newborn. But I love it. And do you know that scene, that beautiful tableau of shepherds, angels, wise men, divine child, Mary, Joseph, star? Do you know that's nowhere in the Bible? Did you know that? It's not in the Bible at all. That is actually a merging of 2 very different birth stories in Matthew and Luke. And this is really an imaginative flourish, the way we merge 2 stories, because in Luke there are shepherds and angels and a manger, for sure. But in Matthew, there's none of that. In Matthew, it's wise men that come to a house to visit the baby, and the baby could be like 2 or 3 years old. It's a very different scene. But then churches all over the world take these 2 stories and just merge them. I think that's great. Now, if you were a sour fundamentalist, a rigid biblical literalist, it would be irritating. Well, that's not in the Bible. That's not what happens. But we should read the Bible with flourish and imagination. Still, let's say the church has decided only to follow the Bible for the Christmas pageant, and we'd rotate the Gospels each year. So imagine with me that next year our Christmas pageant is based only on the Gospel of Mark. We're going to follow it exactly. It would be a short Christmas pageant. Let me describe it to you. We would sing one carol, then the curtain would rise, and there would be an adult Jesus just standing there. He would nod at us and walk off. Pageant over. There's no birth story in Mark. The Gospel of Mark begins with an adult Jesus around 29 years old just appearing at the River Jordan. There's no birth story at all. This is interesting. Apparently, a full gospel of Jesus, which is trying to bring someone to Christ, doesn't necessarily need a birth story. His teachings are enough. His sacrifice for us is enough. His resurrection is enough. It didn't need a birth story. Let's say that the next year we decided our pageant would be based on the Gospel of John. This is what it would look like. We could sing one carol, but then the curtain would rise and out would walk a short man with a mustache and a beret with a clove cigarette dangling from his lips. And he would stand there and offer a poem. That's the beginning of the Gospel of John. There's no birth story in the Gospel of John. It starts with a poem that just ends with the verse, and the Word became flesh. No actual birth scene, just the Word became flesh, and then an adult Jesus appears. Interestingly, in the Gospel of John, Jesus is like 35 or 40. He's older in the Gospel of John. Wouldn't be much of a pageant. Let's say the next year we decided just to use the Gospel of Matthew. Oh, this would be an intense Christmas pageant. The curtain would rise, and first you just would hear bum, 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 because this is like an action film. This is like a Mission Impossible. The curtain will rise, and Joseph, he's got skills. He's intrepid. He'd be doing push-ups and pull-ups, and he'd be working on his martial art moves. And it's this Joseph, this like Jason Bourne figure, knows that there's an evil mastermind out to kill his family. So they have to go on the run. And just like a Tom Cruise movie, it goes international. They flee down to Africa, Egypt in particular, to escape this evil mastermind who starts to kill all the children around Bethlehem. It's this wild, this R-rated violence. And then after a while, Joseph thinks the family might be safe, and he shuttles them back into the Holy Land, keeping them on the move until this evil king dies. The lights would come up in the sanctuary, and all the parents would have their hands over the kids' eyes and over their ears. It's intense. Now, I think it's wonderful that we just kind of merge the gospel stories together, create a calm and beautiful scene. But because we never hear Matthew's story, we miss something. The Gospel of Matthew does something extraordinary with the story of Jesus. Essentially, the Gospel of Matthew is trying to present him to you as the new Moses. It follows exactly the template of the story of Moses, and it's a beautiful way to introduce Jesus as our liberator, that Jesus has come to set us free. And so if you read the whole opening of Matthew, he's following Moses' footsteps perfectly. Remember, Moses killed that Egyptian and then had to flee to Midian. So he's on the run. So the gospel starts with Jesus on the run. And it starts with an evil king, just like Pharaoh. And Pharaoh was killing the young children in Egypt, the young Hebrews as well. It's a perfect match. And any first century Jewish person reading the Gospel of Matthew would see right away, this is just like Moses. And this fact that Jesus came up out of Egypt into the Holy Land, he also has to pass through the river Jordan, just as the people of Israel did. Remember, it was Moses then that led the people into the desert. So too Jesus goes into the desert to face temptations and trials, just like the people of Israel. And then in Matthew, the first thing he does after the desert is go to a mountain and give the Sermon on the Mount, just like Moses went to Mount Sinai and offered the law. Clearly, the Gospel of Matthew wants you to think about Jesus in terms of the liberator. He's come to set us free, just like Moses. Okay. This morning, I want to offer 3 spiritual resolutions for our new year. 3 resolutions I'm thinking about that are based on all I've been talking about. They might be resolutions you want to take hold of, or maybe they'll prompt you to think of what other resolutions you might make. We have a new year ahead of us. So the first resolution, remembering that Jesus came to set us free. He's the new Moses. I want to gain more freedom in 2023. There's my first spiritual resolution. I know Jesus wants me to be free. I'm not sure I'm entirely free. Are you? What is it that shackles me? What keeps me from that fullness and freedom? Am I captive to a certain mode of thinking? Maybe it's just the way I tend to self-deprecate or think I can't do something. That's a type of slavery if you have a series of thoughts that minimize you. How could I be more free in 2023? There are pharaohs today. Am I part of some systems that oppress me in any way? Or even some perspectives? I want to be more free. In what way am I imprisoned by our very culture? Jesus said, "The truth will set you free." I wonder if all of my ideas and my perspectives are actually true. They can't be all true. All my perspectives, all my ideas, there's no way they're all true. But if I could somehow move towards greater truth, I would be set free. And I know this sounds like I'm talking about just myself, but remember that Dr. Martin Luther King taught us that no one is free until everyone is free. And so when I say I want to gain more freedom in 2023, I also want to be part of anything that will help others be more free, those that are oppressed or marginalized. In what ways could you be more free? My second spiritual resolution for 2023 is that I want to be less childish and more childlike. Oh, the nativity with all the children. I want to remember what it's like to be like a child. Not childish. You know what childish is, and I short of patience, and I can go sideways in a hurry too. I don't want to be childish, but childlike. I want to have a greater sense of wonder, a greater curiosity about the world, a spontaneity. We can be so adult. You know, it's important that we're sincere, but not that we're always serious. I want to be spontaneous and more easily to laugh. I want to be childlike. Oh, their curiosity. They're constantly in a discovery mode. You know, there's a social psychologist that says basically people are in one of two modes. They're either in a discover mode or a defend mode. Discover or defend. Are you really seeking to encounter new things, to discover something, either about the persons around you or about life? Or are you in the discover mode? Or a defend mode is you've got your perspectives, you know how you see the world, and you know how you feel, and you basically are just trying to always substantiate your own perspective. This might surprise you. There are some thinkers that believe religion is an intricate form of play, that we enter a separate realm that has its rules, its language, and we play this game here where we're seeking true wisdom, where the game says that we can know deep metaphysical truths. You can't really know it, but in the game, there's these deep metaphysical truths, and we're all here playing and trying to get better at manifesting those essential principles so that when we re-enter the world, when we're not playing, we've learned how to be wiser and more compassionate. I know that sounds irreverent to call this play, but some thinkers believe that's exactly what's happening right now. And my third spiritual resolution for 2023, I want to be more like a sea turtle. Oh, let me explain. You know, at the manger scene, one of the most beautiful things during the Christmas pageant is, there's animals there too. And nowhere in the Bible does it mention animals around the baby Jesus, but he was in a manger, so the assumption is there must be some animals around. And what's so gorgeous is those animals seem naturally drawn to his beauty. Something magnetic about the Christ. The animals come. Well, I want to be more like a sea turtle. Let me explain. Do you know about sea turtles? Because they're awesome. Let me explain. So when a sea turtle hatches from its egg, it's buried in the sand at a beach. It has to fight its way up out of the sand. But once it clears the sand and surfaces, all the birds are waiting to eat you, right? And the crabs are coming. Crabs are like racing to that scene, right? So you got these birds and crabs. Immediately, you've got this harrowing gauntlet of things trying to eat you, and you have to make your way to the water. And it's not easy. You're a little hatchling, so you're making your way to the water. But even then, if you get there, you're not safe. In the shallow waters, the fish are there ready to eat you, and the birds can still prey upon you. What they have to make it to is the open sea. That's where they're trying to get to, the open waters. Now, if a little hatchling can make it out into the open waters, it will attach itself to some floating seaweed to hide. It's so tiny, the predators could get it. It attaches to a floating bed of seaweed, and then in the open ocean currents, it will just float around for 5 years. It has to grow big enough to not be easily eaten. And so for 5 years, it's floating the open ocean currents, traveling thousands of miles until it's big enough. And then it swims free, and get this. After thousands of miles going with the currents, a sea turtle can navigate back exactly to the beach from which it came. In fact, it can navigate exactly anywhere it wants. How is that possible? This gets cooler. Apparently, we don't know exactly how, a sea turtle has magnetoreceptors in its cells. Now, there are various species that can navigate by the magnetic fields of the earth. But we don't know how a sea turtle is doing this. We don't know where exactly that sense is. You know, your sense organs have to be exposed to the environment, so you can see where your ears are, or your nose, or your mouth, right? You have to take in the environment. But a magnetic field of the earth goes down to your very cells, so you don't need an external sense organ. Somewhere in the body of a sea turtle, there are these magnetoreceptor cells. Get this. It can perfectly navigate this magnetic field that's around the earth. Oh, let me take you back to 5th grade geology class, just for a second. The center of the earth is a solid iron core, right? And around that solid iron core is molten nickel and iron churning around it, creating a magnet. We're basically a big bar magnet, the earth, right? And that means there's this magnetic field. These sea turtle cells, somewhere in its body, can sense not just the strength of the magnetic field, it varies around the earth. Also, its inclination, it varies by sort of longitude, latitude. That cell can sense it. Then there's another cell attached to it that's a sensory cell that sends a signal to the brain. And so what the sea turtle feels is a tug. Oh, wait, how cool is this? A sea turtle literally feels tugged towards the direction it seeks. Now, in 2023, I don't want to be more attuned necessarily to the magnetic field around the earth, but I do believe we live within a spiritual field as well, a spiritual realm filled with the most important values in life. And I want to feel some tug in the right directions in this new year. Something more instinctual, something more essential. I get in my head, I think about what are the good ideas, what are my plans, but I want to feel that natural tug towards the good things, the things that matter most. I pray for you in 2023. You feel drawn to the things that matter most. Amen.